Welcome to the Southern U Podcast, brought to you by Darden Archery on the OKest Podcast Network, with your co-host, Matt Brock, Jerremy Ferguson, and Taylor McMurtry. If you're looking for all things land-related in the Southeast, you came to the right place. Whether it's real estate, habitat, wildlife, or just being outdoors, this is the place for you. Welcome to the Southern U. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Southern U Podcast. If this is your first time joining us, we talk all things land related here in the Southeast. We talk hunting, we talk timber, we talk ag, farms, and everything in between. And we are known goof off.
That's right.
Can't be serious all the time around here.
We can delve into a lot of different topics.
That's right. And speaking of topics, today we've got a good one. Got a great show for you. It's me and Jerremy hanging out down here. We're actually at the Tut Land Company headquarters, I guess what you'd call it, right? Home office.
Home office.
And in Thomaston, Alabama, and got to spend the day with some new agents that are going to be coming on board and hanging out with them, and obviously with Joe Blackburn and Walter Tutt here at John Laney. I mean, a lot of guys.
A whole bunch of guys.
And had a lot of fun today, just kind of checking it out. And obviously, Jeremy's a land guy. He's got the Gunnersville office there in Gunnersville, Alabama for Tut. And just made a cool day of it. It's, a little over 3-hour ride for us to get down here or something like that?
Yeah, about 3 hour, 15 minutes. But it was well worth it. We, 4 new agents, I think, today. So. One of which you guys know. We'll let that cat out of the bag before long.
Yeah, we will disclose that later at a later date.
And one, actually 2 that they'll know. One has been a guest appearance.
That's right. Yep.
And then one's on pretty regular. So
that's right.
We'll spill those beans here next week or next episode, 2 weeks. We'll let folks know what all's going on.
And if you notice behind me and behind Jerremy, this is not only the Tut Land Company home office. This is also some of the biggest bucks I've ever seen in my life.
Yep, the Alabama Whitetail Records Museum here in Thomaston. It's just in the lower level of our Tut home office.
Yeah.
So got some absolute whoppers in here, all from Alabama. Some from modern day, some from years gone by.
Yep. Well, I think one of them's even named Golly Whopper.
Yep. Yeah, I think the one over my no.
Yeah, it'd be
behind you.
Yeah, behind me. Yeah, this one back here is
Golly Whopper, the Edgeworth buck.
Yeah. Incredible. But before we jump into the topic of discussion today, I did want to take just a second and thank. We always like to shout out one of our sponsors and that sort of stuff. So today we want to shout out Vitalize Seed. Al, we really appreciate all that the guys in the team at Vitalize does for us. If you've paid attention to any of our content and looked at anything that we've been doing lately, you have probably seen us talking about either stuff that's been in the ground or about to be in the ground.
Or wishing was in the ground.
Wishing was in the ground because we're drowning here. It's finally... I don't know. What has it been? 2 days since rain, maybe?
Yes.
So hopefully that trend, continues for a little bit, just so we can get some stuff in the ground. And actually,
I would love to go back and look at a calendar, but I know at one point in the past month we had looked at a calendar, and out of the, I think 52 some odd days that we looked at, we had gotten rain like 30-something of those 50 days. Mm-hmm. It has just been unrelenting here.
It has, and it's not like when I say rain, we're not talking about a summer shower or pop-up thunderstorm. This has been like buckets of rain for a long time.
A significant issue.
I think,
for us.
if I remember, I think on the last video we put out on YouTube, Matt said something like we got a third of our annual rainfall in the last
in the month of May.
Yeah, in like the last 45 days or something like that. It's absurd. So
yeah, crops. On the drive down, on the way to Thomaston, from our house, we drive through the famed Alabama Black Belt, and the number of crops that are still yet to be picked from the fall or yet to go in the ground. Spring beans, corn, cotton, things of that nature that's grown in this part of the world. There's acres and acres that's just not planted yet. And I know that's a story elsewhere, but in my lifetime, I've not seen a spring with this kind of, heavy rains that really shut down or impede farming practices, dirt work, building, the whole nine. So it's been a tough year.
Absolutely. But hopefully we dry out a little bit and get some stuff in the ground pretty soon.
On the upside, generally, if your habitat is in good shape, you love these real wet spring and summer months because our wildlife does better. Our habitat does better. So, there's pluses and minuses to all this. Now, if you got terrible habitat, then rain or no rain,
Oh, yeah. Well, I remember back when we went to Texas and we sat down with Matt Moore. Matt was talking about, hey, I know we've driven around some of these roads and you're seeing quail everywhere and you're seeing deer, you're seeing rabbits, all this kind of stuff. It's like, don't forget.
Yes.
This place doesn't look like it does if we don't get rain.
That's right.
When we get a really wet spring, it's just a sportsman's paradise down here. But when we don't, it's bad.
Barren.
It's a barren wasteland.
It is rough. I think Matt was saying that they had 2 or 3 relatively wet years or wet spring and summer periods in a row. So that has helped them out quite a bit, especially with the quail numbers. And out there, turkey, they live and die by the water too. Here, that's not quite as accurate.
No, I mean, there's still places to get water for wildlife for the most part. I mean, there's exceptions everywhere, but for the most part, it's not that limited of a resource. Out there, it absolutely is.
Yeah, it is the limited resource.
Yes. And also, I guess we should probably do our bi-weekly shout-outs, too, if you got...
have at it.
You know what? We were talking about Matt Moore. I want to give him a shout-out. Just, I don't know if you guys have paid attention during turkey season or what that dude was able to do, but how many states did he hunt?
I think 6. I know that he added... I believe it was the 25th and 26th states to his list for trying to, kill turkeys in 49.
Yeah.
I believe he hit 25 and 26.
Oh, man.
One of which he did with us.
Yeah.
Matt Brock and Matt Moore and I and another friend of ours, our guide, Austin Young, went up to Nebraska and South Dakota, which, we've shared pictures and talked about with. But, that's a fun trip.
Yeah, shout out to Matt Moore because dude's a killer of the feathered nature.
No question.
even wing shooting and stuff like that. He's just got it.
Yeah.
So shout out to Matt.
Well, cool. Well, I'm going to give a little different shout out. They are not a sponsor, but they're good friends. And I want to shout out to Blair Goins and all the folks over at Rival Outdoors and Feed and Seed there at Muscle Shoals. Blair called us up and said, hey, guys, I think I can provide a lot of what you guys are looking for from, some basic seed needs and herbicides and fertilizers and things of that nature. And, man, if he can't get them at good prices. So
Yeah.
I recommend folks checking those guys out and seeing what they have to offer.
Hey, we're all about saving money any way possible, especially for those of you who have been on TikTok, especially.
Oh, gosh.
Saw in the talking about the increase in the price of beef lately. You guys, I don't know, no pun intended, but you ate that video or that little clip up, man.
that surprised me, but I did see. We put that episode together. What's it been? 2 or 3 weeks ago?
Yeah, 2 weeks ago. I think.
And just after we put it together, I saw a release from I guess an article or one of the episodes off of Glenn Beck where he had a guest talking about the war on beef, and I didn't. I'm just a very, very, very small producer. I just was talking about the things that I'm seeing, and apparently, it's a hot topic.
Yeah,
so,
well, it's funny because, I mean, you guys probably don't pay attention to this as much as I do, but it's amazing what pieces of content that we have that resonates with different audiences. That particular video didn't do much of anything on YouTube, Facebook, or Instagram, but TikTok, it may be the best video or the best piece of content we've ever put out. And so
it's wild.
It's crazy. So
look, I'm glad there's people that understand this social media algorithm thing. I don't. I would love for somebody to explain it to me, but I don't know that anybody really knows.
Well, I mean, I know
that people got good ideas. But
yeah, and I do know why that video did well, just because.
See, I don't.
It starts with a hook. It starts with you looking at the camera and going, if you want to eat steak, you better buy it now. So, I mean, that's kind of that helps, but still probably exceeded our expectations on that for sure. But anyways, as far as what we're going to talk about today, some of you, we encourage you to go watch it. Some of you already have. But if you haven't watched our Cedar Mountain Project on YouTube, go check that out. It'll be our links are all over our social. You can find it anywhere. But it's a project where you and Bray and Matt were all there. And I was just kind of behind the camera. And we're just going to kind of dissect that video and just kind of talk a little bit about that particular project and just kind of like what decisions were made and why those decisions were made to do certain things in certain areas, and just kind of follow up on that, because I think that's, in terms of active management, we talk about a lot of things that revolve around that on this show, but I think it helps to kind of see these things in action and get a little bit of an explanation as to why we did this instead of that, and why you planted this instead of that, for food plots and all those sort of things. So, and this is kind of your baby too. It's
been my baby for a few years now,
right.
Or one of them anyway. Yeah, I think I have a lot of babies. Definitely no pun intended, 'cause got no kids.
Right.
So. But I sold that track, I believe it would have been the late part of 20 or early part of 21. I'd have to go back in files and look. Look, I've slept since that happened, and my mind just don't hold on to all of that stuff. But anyway, sold that track to the folks that bought it, and through the whole buying process, we looked at several tracks and talked through what they wanted to do, and they really wanted to have premier hunting, but they wanted to be within a close drive to where they lived, and then also a close drive to where they also have lake homes. So we had a really finite area to work with. So we searched and searched and finally came up with this particular track, and it was a raw timber track. The folks that own it, I had done a lot of timber business with when I was with Cetera and the timber days, and knew those guys and talked with them through a lot of the track. And the guys that actually had it listed were TUD agents at one point, so I had good relationships with those guys, and we really dug into what we could do with it. And my customers and clients, they own land, but they had never bought a recreational track, and they didn't know really where to start. And I said, well, I do. And let's just walk through the process, and I can give you some idea of what it's going to take, and I can give you some idea of what it's going to cost. But if I tell you, if anybody tells you they can put you a plan together and tell you what it's going to cost, they're wrong, because there's always going to be things that pop up. But we held fairly close to schedule. I told them it was a 5-year plan. We should be roughly in year 4. And we still got a little ways to go. But it's, y'all saw it. It's maturing nicely, but there's still some things that we've got to do. But really, them having the understanding of what it was going to take to get it to the point that it is now and to get to a finished product was paramount, because it's a fairly large track. It's in excess of 500 acres. It's in a location that land prices are fairly high. But one of the keys is it does have really good neighbors for the most part. There's one particular area that's kind of a tough neighbor, but it's not going to cause us a major problem.
Right.
So that was one of the keys when we were looking, was to try to find a place that we knew we could put management on the ground and not consistently be battling poaching and just trespass, just the whole nine.
Yeah.
And because where that part of the world is, and some folks know where it's at, and a lot don't, but those that are familiar with it know why it can be easy to access. But we deal with game wardens. Obviously, Matt and I both work for the state, so any property we work on, we have a pretty tight grip on. Anyway. Oh yeah. But yeah, so it's been a long project. It's been a fun project. They killed their first buck off of it last year. Was a 4-year-old. I think it was a upper 130s, low 140 type deer, best I recall. I didn't tape it. Saw plenty of pictures. Great deer. They're much bigger, coming from that part of the world. So it's only a matter of time. But what we did was take a raw timber tract that already had roughly 80 to 85 acres of clear cut, and we started managing those clear cuts in a different way. One is actually still actively growing in natural pine hardwood regen. The other 40 acres, they were both split, both of them just a little over 40 acres. We managed them 2 separate ways because we wanted 2 different habitat types. So like I said, one is still growing, still doing its thing. And this would be year 4 for that clear cut, because it was clear cut right as they purchased it, right before. But the other side, the other 40, 2-3 acres or so, was clear cut 2 years prior, so it had a little bit of head start, and we had to wrap our hands around that one before it got away from us. And what we did is we airily sprayed that thing with a broad control. We wanted to kill as much as we could and set it back to a more of a grass forward type habitat. But you're always going to miss trees, so there's hardwood still surviving in it, and there's pine still surviving in it. And we've run one fire through it. We're getting ready to burn it late summer. Now we want to change the makeup of that stand and change that over just a little bit. And we'll get into more talking about fire timing and what it promotes, on other shows that we can't get off the rail on that.
Right.
It's a whole show. But then the other side, with it still growing currently, we are going to do our best to run as hot a fire through that track as we can with the pines that's on it. And we want to kill a lot of the pines, but we want some of them to survive and leave it as a mixed pine stand, just controlled by fire. And you can see by the videos, the fields are large. I mean, the two larger fields are both in excess of 10 acres. One of them's primarily used for birds, dove hunting, and the other is primarily a destination type food plot for deer. And it's got, the whole thing soybeans. The whole 10 acres is planted soybean field. But you saw the habitat that we had around it. So deer got plenty to eat. I'll tell you, the funny thing is our biggest problem right now is there's so much wildlife that we're getting problems out of seed thieves.
Right. Yep.
So, we're putting seed out and drilling and planting with row planters and all that, and we've got varying types of wildlife just out in the fields with us, picking up our seed.
Yep.
So deer and turkey and quail and all those things are great, but sometimes they can be a problem. Look, I don't think you're ever going to run into a problem with quail.
No.
But you can absolutely run into a problem with turkeys, with seed.
Yeah.
You can run into a problem with food plots germinating and subsisting because of deer. But, that's part of it.
Shoot more does.
That's it. and look, this client's going to have to do that.
Yeah.
We have entered the point of no return now. It's mandatory that they start shooting does or they're going to be in trouble.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think especially a place like this one, that client's got to understand that it's an investment at this point.
Yes.
And do I want my investment to just get flushed down the toilet, or do I want to try to save as much of it as I can? If you're going to do that, it means you got to shoot some does, man.
That's it.
You've got to thin them out.
And look, like anybody that can afford a property like that, those guys are very busy making their living. They're good at what they do, and that's the best place for them to spend their time to support their families. And that's why we're working for them. The best use of our time is out there supporting ours, working for them. But these guys are very active. They want things to be done and want to be things done right and in a timely manner. But they're great guys.
That's good. Well, let's back up just a little bit because I want you to talk, like when you say this was just a timber stand, not actively managed.
Well, it was actively managed. It was owned by a smaller timber landowning family or company. Family owns tons of land. One of the larger landowners, in the state, but from a timber company standpoint, relatively small. But it was actively managed. It's a great site index. So the timber that you're seeing out there, most of it's somewhere between 18 and 23, depending on which stand you're in. And we thinned our stands accordingly to age and basal area and what we wanted. But this place, it's being managed for wildlife, number one. And then second is timber. And timber's way down the list. So when we were working with our foresters developing this plan, that was their instruction. Hey, give us a thinning plan for primarily for wildlife, but we do want to, have some focus on timber. And we gave them our ideas, and they helped draw that up and gave us, their feedback. And so, got a contract on the timber, with those guys and thinned the timber. And we did most of the oversight on the timber thinnings as far as tree selection and things like that. But it was absolutely, handled with registered foresters to help us out. Because we don't give forestry advice. We give plenty of habitat advice, and we do a lot of logging for people, but it's with the assistance of a forester.
Right. And so I guess like what I was getting at there is client says, this is what we want. They acquire the property, and then they turn to you and go, okay, make it what we want it to be.
Yep.
So I guess what I would maybe want you to dive into for a minute is when you look at this property and you've kind of got your bearings as far as what it offers, what are you thinking of step number one that needs to happen in order to achieve the goals of this landowner?
Step number one is is their goal even possible? Mm-hmm. Step number 2.
What's it going to cost?
What's it going to cost?
Right.
Or is it, are we in the right location for what we want to do? Mm-hmm. And then, obviously right there at the top is what's this going to cost us? And then what assets are here on the property that may allow us to pay for these things? Mm-hmm. And so our immediate, out the gate, the first thing we did, and this was during our due diligence period, through the purchase of the property, was, we had a timber cruise done. So we had, a real good idea of what kind of timber value was out there on the landscape. So we had a number to work with. I could go to the guys and say, okay, here's what you're paying for the property. Here is a timber cruise. It's an estimate of what's out there on the landscape. This is how, with me and the forester, we've put together a plan. This is about what we feel like you can pull out of this property. And that's the money that you have to either put in the bank, spend on the property, however you want to do this. Mm-hmm. And so they, in turn put, all the thinning proceeds back into the property. And that's one thing where I try to talk to folks buying property that they want to do recreational development is, if you know the things to look for, you can pay for a lot of the improvements that you want to do with the timber that's on a piece of property. I would say that 99.9% of the time, the days of buying property and paying for it with timber are over. Will somebody luck into that occasionally? Sure. But, now our focus is always, okay, well, we're going to have to expend capital, or can we pay for this out of something with the property? And so with a property like that, and with the clients that had that focus, we were looking for a property that gave us that ability. And this one, certainly did. And the individuals that were selling it, they were timber folks too. So they could look at it and go, okay, is this property worth more to us as a timber tract, or can we sell it as a recreational tract, which is a HBU? That's going to be a higher and better use than the timber. A lot of times, because people are giving you recreational value versus just straight timber value.
Right.
So that's made that decision. Oh, and man, this is a better suited tract for recreation, not just growing timber. Because it had, of the 500 plus acres, it's only 235 acres of production timberland, which is all loblolly pine. And it's low lying, but the side index is really strong.
Right.
That there's a lot of volume of timber on that place still.
Yeah, and it looks great just from the thinning that's been done. I mean, it's even flying it over, with the drone and checking that out. It's just like, man, that looks good.
And when it comes to a timber stand, Lord help him for all the things I learned from him. First guy I worked for in Georgia, Todd Hunt, he was a perfectionist when it came to tree selection. And boy, that wore off on me. So I am not always a cut down machine man's best friend, because I harp on tree selection. If we're spending all this time and money developing these tracks, the last thing I want to do is ride down this road and see a bunch of fork trees or a bunch of trees that's got the terminal broke out and another limb's taken over and it's got a old hook in it, or it's fusiform rust, but a lot of people just say scarred up, cat face on a tree. Which you just don't want to see those things. Right. To me, it doesn't look polished, and we've got to go out there and do some removals to make it look a little better. But
right,
and we lost a little bit of timber from the burning too.
Yeah,
we did stress a few trees.
Well, and there was I don't know if it may be on the neighboring property, but you could see it from that property.
Yes.
There was some pine beetle damage. Yeah.
Significant pine beetle damage. That's about 40 acres over there that's just solid pine stand. To my knowledge, it's 100% mortality.
I mean, it looks that way, even from the air. Flying over it with a drone was like, whoa, you know.
Yep. We had about maybe a half-acre spot on us, and it was back in the area that we stopped and looked and talked about where the pines didn't get thin like they needed to because of quotas and rain and all that. There's a little patch down in there that beetles got to, and they got there real late in the year, winter, right before winter, and so they didn't do much there. And if they did, we could easily get in front of it and stop, the beetles because that stand's so open now that adjoins it.
Right. I got you. Yeah, and so I guess moving from there, one question I was going to ask you about the property was, when you kind of come down that main road, there's a section that you guys had cleared off and have seedlings planted. I guess that'd be on the left-hand side if you're traveling. So there's those, and then there's another spot. I was going to say, what is the criteria or what made you guys go, this is the spot, I think this is a good place for us to start planting some oaks, instead of picking some other spot, or is there a rhyme or reason?
Sometimes there is, and sometimes there's not. Yeah. So, as always, it depends.
Yeah, it depends.
Honestly, the spot on the left-hand side of the road, look, logging operations, especially with big wood like that, takes big decks. So that area, you see the limb debris pile is still there partially. That was a big log deck. And we have to have them. There's just no way around it. So what we wanted to do is have larger than average decks because we knew we were going to need them, but two, just to give us some diversity. Once you get off of when you see it, it's a clear defined line. It goes from hardwood in the ridges to the bottoms. It's pine. Right. Yeah. So we wanted to stretch out some hardwoods throughout that pine stand for the future so that there's, some soft mass and just give a little bit more diversity. And some larger fields like that, we also want to have some thermal cover, some loafing areas. So as those hardwoods get, a little older, that's going to provide some pretty large fields for turkeys to, do their thing in, but they can still get under those pines that are there, the larger pines, or get in those hardwoods in the future and loaf around in the shade.
Gotcha.
So there are some reasons, but part of it was we're dealing with large decks because we're dealing with big wood, and we just need to take up some of that ground.
Okay, yeah, I was going to say, just for efficiency's sake, this is already done. We need to just make the most of what is already here.
And we're going to come back. These particular folks they're not enrolled in NRCS or CSP or anything like that. But we're going to come back and do some native wildflowers and pollinator stuff in those open areas, just to change things up. Look, those people. If it's good for wildlife, they're all in.
That's cool.
Yeah.
And I'm sure it's not to talk bad about anybody, but it's not every client that has that same mentality.
No.
And so when you get one like that, it's probably like, oh, yes. If I make a recommendation and they can see the value in it, they're on board.
And they know that this is a long haul investment for them. Even, I can comfortably say this because where it is, even if we turded up the place, it's still going to appreciate in value because of its location.
Yeah.
But everything that we're doing is just bringing that appreciation up to another level and just that much faster. Because this is on the fringe of the area that you get quite a bit of duck hunting in North Alabama. It's on the river. Like I said, great neighbors. Won't identify the neighbors, but some big neighbors that are managing for wildlife, varying different types. So it's just the right spot.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to use that term, though, turding up. You heard it here first.
Yeah. Look, you can.
Southern U exclusive.
Southern U exclusive. You can turd up a place. Look, and I've done it. I have jumped into stuff and early in the career, decided, hey, this is what we need to do. Didn't take enough time, didn't account for all the factors, and we did some operations that we shouldn't have done.
Yeah, well,
and look, that happens, and you're going to learn from them. It's just great. I was fortunate enough that I learned those lessons on properties that we owned with a timber company.
Right.
I didn't mess up anybody else's.
Right.
But we did learn some lessons. But you don't want to learn lessons with customers. That's hard to overcome.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, it's not exactly a direct relation, but anytime that you are working with earth, with dirt and trees and whatever, things can just happen. I mean,
absolutely.
One of my clients is a lakefront home builder, and on their podcast that I produced for them, they shared a story of building on Smith Lake. Well, it's a lake lot. It's pretty intense grade. I mean, it slopes to the lake pretty sharp. And anyways, they were talking about the GC on the job called him and said, "Hey, look, something's up with the dirt here. Like I don't know what's going on, but the dirt is spongy, and is the only way that they know to describe it." So comes over there and checks it out, and turns out the soil that they were trying to build on, it wasn't like foundation worthy, I guess you'd say. It's not bedrock. So they had to get geotechnical engineers involved with going down and trying to find.
They had to put in piers and all that.
Yeah. But what's crazy is for that particular example, they go 12 feet deep to bedrock, pour footers, and then put piers in, and then pour a slab on top.
Right.
And so that's just, I mean, you don't hear about that type of stuff every day. And this guy's...
Especially not here.
No. And I mean, in this, it's part of the world. I mean, it's the tail end of the Appalachian Mountains. Like, you know what I mean? It's generally good to build on.
Right.
But then this guy's built a ton of them. And so whenever that happened, he was like, this is kind of a first for me, and if you looked at the home, you would never know that it's not the slab is not just sitting on top of dirt.
Yeah.
It's got 12-foot piers underneath it going down to bedrock. So the reason I say that is there's just, anytime you're working with the earth, with dirt and moving stuff around, like things can just happen, and there's just not really a good way of knowing about it.
Well, and that's why ponds and lakes are such a gamble.
Yes.
And look, we build them every year.
Yep.
Probably 1 or 2 a year, 3 maybe. But they are a gamble.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't know.
Well, and a lot of times your client wants you to guarantee that this thing's going to hold water. I don't know that I can do that.
Yep. And no, I don't think anybody's going to. There's some great engineering firms out there that can come out and give you the absolute best possible scenario and tell you, this should be good. But the fact of the matter is you don't know till it's built.
Right. Yeah. And
I've seen some doozies built that ended up having to be drained and rebuilt. And I mean, I've seen some approach 7 figures.
Man, that would hurt. That would hurt. But going back to the Cedar Mountain Project here, I noticed. I mean, obviously, you guys were planting a bunch of the oak seedlings, and even in the video, Bray references that it's several redwood. Gosh, Lord have mercy. Red oak species and white oak species, just kind of a mixture of those.
Just a variety.
And that's just mainly to ensure that, diversity is just good in general.
That's it.
But also you've got acorns that are dropping at different points throughout the year.
Different maturity times and different desirabilities, the whole thing. And then you'll see... I guess we'll do a part 2 or part 3 or whatever. We're also building, duck holes there, and we've already got some other red oak species planted there, to where they're, we specifically want them dropping really small acorns and a lot of them, and so we selected for those species around the edges of the waterfowl impoundments. So
that's cool. And can we talk placement or not placement, but of your roads? So I feel like that's something that probably does not get talked about enough.
Yep.
But when your client acquired the property, were there roads already in place, or how much of that was we got to just blaze a trail through this and figure out
there
where
were
we're
roads there because it was an industrial timber track. Okay. They were pretty good down in the bottoms. They were not all-weather roads. We rebuilt them to be all-weather within reason. Mm-hmm. That place can go underwater at times, not by a lot, but if it goes under, you don't want to be out there, riding around up and down the roads on something heavy. Mm-hmm. It's going to handle ATV traffic, side-by-side traffic, and light truck traffic. Last week, if you'd gone out there and put a triaxle on it, because I need some gravel, if we had put a triaxle on it, it would have been stuck on the road. Oh, yeah. And they're good roads, but it's just water table's high there because it's close to the river. It's clay ground, so it's slick. It creates trouble.
It's that kind of clay that just sticks. Oh my gosh, we were trudging through that stuff.
So the black belt folks understand it, and I'll tell you, I've seen some soil like that up through the Midwest and in the prairies. Mm-hmm. That just gumbo that just sticks.
Yeah.
You can't kick it off. You can't, when you're driving down the road, you got to be doing 30 to sling it out. Yep. And, it's just one of those things. But yeah, so it's tough dirt. But no, some of the roads we built ourselves, we put in ourselves, mm-hmm. and those were for ease of access to certain locations in the property. And then one road was actually built to give access to a neighboring landowner. Mm-hmm. So one landowner has a tract that's on the back side, and you can't hold anybody out in the state of Alabama. They do not have a deeded easement through, so we can kind of control where they go. They were just driving through the middle of the property down the main road. Mm-hmm. Well, I built them one down the edge of the property so that they didn't cause a problem if they wanted to come in and out while my clients were there trying to hunt. Yeah. So we did. We took a dozer and excavator up across the mountain and rebuilt a road, and that'll be on another episode because that was an unreal project. When you build a road across a limestone mountain, there's a lot of work that goes into that. I mean, mm-hmm. Sometimes it goes to the extent of having to have a hammer on a excavator, and we've used them, but it was an expensive proposition, but we felt like we had to do that to make sure that we didn't have a bumping heads later between two neighboring landowners.
Right. Well, and also, but even on that road you're talking about, if it's, I think it's the one I'm thinking of, but you also put some cross drain, culverts in there too, mm-hmm. to, because it is a pretty steep grade on that mountain, and
on some of it,
whenever water's coming off of that, the rain we're getting lately.
That's it.
I would hate to know what that road would have looked like if those were not present,
One of the more time-consuming projects we had out there was putting in all the cross-drain culverts because you got all the topography coming into the bottoms, and then you've got all that ground that's low close to the river, and still you've got all that flow that's coming off those ridges wanting to get to the river. So there are other low spots that we stopped and talked about, even water coming up over the road.
Oh, yeah, sure.
That we may need to bridge at some point. And we were also rocking all the ends of the culverts in. Mm-hmm. And you can see that sedimentation has occurred, and the sediment now is on top of some of the rocks. But most of the sedimentation occurred, further up the ditches and held to where it got to where we wrapped the ends of our culvert so they didn't wash. Mm-hmm. And it didn't fill up and then block, half of our culvert.
Right.
And that's why we did that. But we took the extra time to, bring an off-road truck in there and, haul to each one of those and take the track hoe and place everything. Mm-hmm. And it's held up really, really well. But like I said, we've learned some things, and you're gonna have to evolve with the track, because when you start taking timber or any other plants off of the landscape during, rainy season, there's nothing there to soak up the moisture.
Right.
It's just soaking into the soil, and then it's got to move, or it's sitting on top of the soil and it's got to move. So you got to take all that into account.
Right. And I know even on some of the plots that were planted.
Washing.
Yeah, well, they are. But, I mean, what I was going to get to there is that those are in place to give access options. You hear us talk a lot about, you may have the greatest spot to hunt, whether that's hardwoods or that's a green field or whatever it is that you've got going on. You may have the best place, and you've got your target buck coming out there like clockwork, but if you can't access it,
that's it,
quickly, easily, with stealth, without getting blown out, that sort of stuff, then it's kind of useless. And so one spot in particular where it was actual box blind, elevated blind, there were, I think, 3 different ways to access that same plot. And, that's something that I feel like a lot of people probably don't talk about enough.
Every stand has minimum of 2 ways to get to it. Yeah.
So based on wind, and those sort of things, you have options. And so I'm glad that we took the time to point that out because, you hear me talk about this occasionally, but that's a pain point that I've got for a very small piece of property that I get to hunt is I don't have any options. There is only one way in and one way out, and the deer know that. Yeah. So it's really frustrating to know what your trail camera is sending you and just knowing, like, there's no way that I can get in here without bumping these deer. And, if I could go around and get on neighboring property or something, and access it from the other side or something like that, then it'd be different. But you can't, and it's kind of frustrating. But.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And then we are also going to move feeder locations as well. There's some feeders out there, but I wanted to change the locations of the feeders. One, I'm a firm believer of you don't want your feeders sitting somewhere that they just have the opportunity to have moisture just sit under. So I'll have gravel brought out, and we'll build little pads to sit the feeders on so that there's just not a puddle of mud under a feeder eventually. So we'll move and place those. And then also we didn't want to have those that people are just going to be driving by all the time during hunting season or having to walk by, just trying not to pressure the deer. But really on that topic, you're talking about going to and from stands, pressure's key, obviously, because that's what we're talking about. But this particular property, along with some of the others, aren't pressured very much. So you can actually bump deer on this place and them not leave the country.
Yeah.
And as soon as they leave the fields, I mean, you've seen the habitat. If they stop and stand and look, they're hid. So they're not blowing out of the country because they feel like they've got no place to hide.
Yeah, well, it's good bringing that up too, because there's a couple things that I noticed just not having a wildlife degree or that kind of background when we set foot on a few of those fields, and actually all of them. Now that I think about it, they all had 2 things that I thought was just kind of a cool observation. One was there is a screen planted on the edge of those, at least in front of like the blind, where the blind's going to be, or something like that planted.
Yep.
And I know one kind of got smoked out by some herbicides.
Oh, did it ever?
But I mean, we know that that's going to be there eventually once you get it right. But there was a screen planted there, and there was also not every field wasn't just wide open. Every field had at least maybe a couple oaks or something like that scattered out,
some trees.
or a debris pile.
That's right.
Where the Polonia was, and I just thought it was kind of interesting to hear them say. Even I think Matt or Bray one said, "We're just going to leave this piled up right here, if for no other reason, just to break this field up."
Yeah,
that's it. Like there's not really some nutritional advantage or anything like that. I mean, there may be some honeysuckle and some stuff like that grow up in it eventually. But
the thing that I think many people in our business lose sight of is they get so keyed up or keyed in on we're working on deer and we're working on turkey or we're working on quail or whatever the species is, to where our focus is generally on trying to benefit wildlife as
in
a
general
whole.
Right.
And that's with, habitat, food sources, managing those populations, trapping, the whole nine. We do our best not to just focus on one thing. That seems to, it's been much more successful.
Yeah.
Doing it that way versus just trying to do one thing.
Well, I just think the general deer hunter thinks, well, I want this field to be wide open so that I can see everything in it. And that's not always the most beneficial because, certain times of the year, bucks are stupid and they do dumb things.
Yeah.
But for the most part, they like to feel safe.
Oh, yeah.
And, and if I can look out in that field and see danger, or look out in that field and just see something
nothing.
I don't want to see, then I don't come out, you know. But,
or if you see nothing that you're looking for, you don't come out.
Turkey hunting is the same way.
Yep.
Whenever it's legal to use decoys, you're calling, and that turkey looks across that field and there's no.
Well, that's one reason I do the buffers the way that I do them, and then two. You'd have to be looking at the video and I could point it out, but we'll show some, later on. The field behind the shop there that got roasted with the the pre-emergent.
Yeah.
The way I planted that was down those edges as the buffer, but then I had to strip through the field all the way from one end to the other to break it up to a lower half and an upper half, so that later on, during deer season, or there's good bedding. Pine thicket on the lower end. If there's a buck coming off the ridge cruising, I want him to have to walk all the way across that field to check that lower side to give me every opportunity to identify that deer, stop that deer, and kill that deer.
Yeah, if I can look out there and see, well, there's nothing out there I'm interested in, turn around and go back or whatever, but I can't see. I need to see what's over there. Then come on past. So.
I make it a practice on every field to have a breakup in the height of vegetation, whether that's it goes from soybeans to something short like clover or just a fall plot, or it goes from soybeans to corn or to sorghum or whatever it may be. I'm going to have different structure in my fields that are large enough to have that. And that's what we did out there.
Yeah, and it's just a cool setup too, because no matter what access you take to get to those fields, you can get there undetected, no matter what wind direction, and you have something to cover your movement while you're getting into or out of.
And one thing you don't know yet, but what I've been doing the last couple of days, I told y'all I carried some hay down there.
Yeah.
Part of that was to control some erosion in some spots, but we've got some hay that got rained on before we got it rolled up. I'm going to use it to sit in front of box stands, and that's going to be some of our our breaks.
Yeah.
We've got 2 box stands that primarily just hunt in open woods. Our pine stands. They've got long lanes and things like that. Well, I'll stack those around so somebody can get out of the house and be behind the hay bales and sneak to the trails and get out. So
gotcha.
That's just something easy that I can. It's cheap, free. It's coming from our farm. It got wet. We're not going to feed it for the most part because it got wet more than once.
Probably got wet a lot. If
it did. So we'll do that, and at which point they get rotten enough, I can go down there and pick them up with a tractor and move them out of the way and burn them when we do a fire.
Yeah.
So
that's cool.
But that has been a fun project. One thing I didn't mention with the timber that took us a little while to get everything done the way I really wanted to do it, especially talking with our forester. I'm not a big fan of stressing trees back to back.
Yeah.
Pine stands, we're talking here. So if I thin, I don't really want to run a fire through it. the same season. I want generally a growing season between those two stressors. So that's where we stand now. This will be the second round of spraying, so we'll be burning half of that again for the second time, and then part of it will be the first time it's been burned because we had to wait a year because it took us 2 years to thin, and we had to set everything out a year, and then we sprayed it, and then we'll burn it.
Gotcha.
And when I talk about spraying it, part of the stand we were able to spray with a helicopter. We get one there pretty easy, and then like we talked about within some of the stand where the hardwoods were, we had a skidder come spray. That way we could stay away from the hardwoods.
Gotcha.
With better efficiency, better results. If we're around hardwoods with a helicopter, we just have to buffer them a long way, and that does a good job.
Gotcha. That's cool, man. It's just it was a really neat project to just, I didn't get to see what it looked like before he started, but it was cool just to kind of see how it's evolved. And you can look across, especially in the aerial stuff, you can be like, okay, well, I could see where they thinned this timber, and I can see, where they planted this and where they did other things. So it's just kind of neat to kind of imagine how it's been.
And for good representation, a lot of these folks in the South understand what a fully stocked pine plantation looks like. That was an unthinned stand. Part of it was an unthinned stand at 21 years old, and part of it had been thinned once.
Okay.
So it had a real light thinning on it. Basal area was really high. Timber quality is great, but we went in and, obviously with the help of the forester, decided how we wanted to handle it. And then, hey, somebody blowing the horn on the street out there.
Yep, sorry.
But had to put our plan in place and thinned it, and then it's done really well.
Nice. That's cool, man. Well, if you guys haven't already done so, again, I just want to encourage you, check out the YouTube video of this project, because they share some pretty valuable information and kind of give you some behind the scenes of why they did this and some mistakes, even some stuff, some things that didn't go exactly according to plan.
Yeah, and I'll interrupt again. Read the label, read the label, read the label. And I did, but I was not the one that mixed the herbicide, and that's where my mistake was. And then my help's mistake was he didn't follow up with the question because apparently he didn't understand.
Right.
So, but we've crossed that bridge. All's good. No long-term harm.
Right. It's a little delay.
Just a little delay. Yep. As a matter of fact, I planted some of it last week, and it's coming up. It's struggling a little bit. The rest of it got rained on again, so I won't get it planted for another week.
No. No, I guess not. But anyways, Jeremy, you got anything else you want to add to? I think we've covered that track pretty good. If you got questions on any of that stuff that we did there, reach out and call. We've got folks that can help you do any of those things. I know we've got some questions on the tree tubes and stakes, and look, there's a lot of places to source that type of stuff. You can reach out to us. We can give you some insight on those things, and we can give you insight on gear that we're using, or tools, or implements, or even heavy equipment that we're using. I know I got to thinking about it, talking to some folks on Facebook about all the different drills and planters, and I thought about it. They were talking about the differences between efficiencies of grain drills and ferminators and planters and the whole nine. And I think I went down the list of, I had a John Deere 8300 drill, had a Great Plains 1006, had a Great Plains 606, had a Great Plains 706. Oh, geez.
Had a Genesis 5. It's still at a client's property. He's actually got it. Matt and I still have a PH, and I've had an 8-foot ferminator in the past, and still got row planters. So, there's not many of these implements that we haven't tried and put through their paces. And the conversation we were having is everybody was trying to pick one that was better than the other. And y'all, that's going to be so site specific and depend on what you're doing. So one's not greater than the other every time. And that's for everything, you know.
Sure.
The practices that we're implementing on that track won't work for every track. Every track is different. So, you know, if you're working with a consultant, a biologist, forester, whatever, and you feel like you've got a cookie cutter plan, I would say look further.
Sure.
If you feel like it's cookie cutter, because every property is going to be very, very different.
Yep. No doubt about it. Well, guys, we really do appreciate you hanging out with us. Again, if you haven't done so already,
Buy steak.
Yeah, apparently so. Buy beef.
Buy your beef and eat it now.
Yeah, I guess so. But yeah, please like, share, subscribe. Tell your friends about the podcast. Share a link with them. Make fun of us. Leave comments. Tell us how bad. Yeah, it doesn't matter, man. We just like hearing from you and make sure that we are providing you with at least some entertainment. Yeah, hopefully it's informative and helps you guys to achieve some of the goals and answer some questions that you guys have. But we really appreciate you, and hopefully, again, we say this and say it and say it. I feel like we've been saying it for a year now. But,
well, we have.
But we are nearing completion. We are getting close to letting this cat out of the bag on this project we've been working on for the better part of a year now. And we're getting excited. There for a while, I was a little worried. Now I'm excited.
Yeah.
So
it's taking shape.
Yep, starting to happen.
But when things take shape, it takes money. So
it does, unfortunately. Yeah. It takes money and it takes time. And generally, if you have money, it doesn't take as much time.
Yeah.
But if you don't have money, it takes a lot more time.
So
that's why
you guys have figured out why it took us a year.
That's right.
We're not wanting to spend all our money.
No.
But it's been a good ride, and it's going to continue to get better.
That's right.
But yeah, like, share. Look, we need y'all's help spreading the word about what we're doing. So we're going to try to do some things to maybe better some of what we're doing, get you more content down the road. But stay with us, invite people, like, share. If you're interested in buying or selling land, hey, call us. Yep. We've got a lot of team members now that you can work with in multiple states. Mm-hmm. So if you've got questions looking for land, primarily right now, if you're looking, you can holler at me for Alabama and Tennessee. I can get you hooked up with one of our new agents in Tennessee. We got a couple, 3 new ones today for Alabama and Mississippi. So if you're interested in buying or selling, give us a shout.
Yeah, and obviously, site visits or consults, things like that. Obviously,
look, y'all, it's that time of year. If it hadn't been raining so much, we'd already been doing more of them. Mm-hmm. But if you are interested in a site visit, this is bordering the time of year where we're able to get out and do these things. So Bray's available, Matt's available, I'm available. We've got Zach that's been on that if you're up Tennessee, Kentucky way, Zach's available. We can get you hooked up with him. There are plenty of folks that we can get you hooked up with, even if you're just not right here in our back door.
Yep, that's right. And so that's what we want to do. We always want to provide value to you guys and make sure that we're giving you what you need and helping you connect the dots whatever that looks like.
That's it. You guys stay safe on the 4th.
That's right. Have a very blessed 4th of July.
God bless USA.
That's right. No matter, I don't care what your political.
God bless all of us. No, let's just leave it at that, I guess.
That's right. I don't care what your political affiliation is. It doesn't matter. I'm thankful to live in this country, and Amen. I hope that you are too.
You should be if you're not.
That's right. But we appreciate you guys, and we will see you on the next one.
Out.